Script, how to learn faster, backed by science, not hype. Have you ever tried to learn something new, a language, a skill, a concept, and felt like your brain just refused to cooperate? You study for hours, highlight everything, take notes, maybe even rewatch the same tutorial over and over. Yet days later, it's like your brain hit delete. The information fades, motivation drops, and frustration takes over. You start thinking, maybe I'm just not smart enough. But the truth is, intelligence isn't the problem, it's strategy. Most people don't fail to learn because they're incapable. They fail because they're using a system that works against how the brain is actually wired. You see, learning isn't just about absorbing information. It's about changing your brain. Every time you learn something new, your brain physically rewires itself. Neurons form new connections, and existing ones strengthen or weaken based on how you use them. It's like sculpting. Your mind is constantly reshaping itself through every thought, every repetition, every failure. But here's the part most people miss. Your brain isn't designed for memorizing information. It's designed for survival. And survival doesn't require remembering everything. It requires filtering what's important. That's why passive learning, reading, watching, highlighting feels productive but doesn't stick. Your brain treats it as background noise. It only starts paying attention when you engage it, when you struggle a little. Science calls this desirable difficulty. It means the best learning happens when your brain works just hard enough to feel slightly uncomfortable. That mild frustration you feel when you can't recall something, that's not failure. That's your brain forming deeper neural connections. The more effort you use to retrieve knowledge, the more permanent it becomes. It's not about repetition, it's about retrieval. Let's take an example. Imagine you read a chapter of a book. If you simply reread it, you'll feel familiar with the content, but that's an illusion of learning. If instead you close the book and try to explain what you just read, even if you forget half of it, your brain begins to reinforce what it knows and repair what it doesn't. This is called active recall, and it's one of the most powerful learning tools discovered in neuroscience. It transforms knowledge from short-term awareness into long-term memory. But there's another layer, timing. The brain doesn't grow stronger by cramming information. It grows through spacing. The spacing effect is one of the most replicated findings in cognitive psychology. When you review material at spaced intervals, say today, then tomorrow, then 3 days later, your brain interprets the repetition as important. It begins to prioritize that information, making it harder to forget. This is how you can spend less total time studying, but remember more. Learning isn't about time spent. It's about timing itself. And then there's sleep, the underrated hero of learning. Every night, as you drift into deep and REM sleep, your brain isn't resting. It's replaying, reorganizing, and integrating everything you learned during the day. Neurons that fired together while you were practicing a skill or studying a concept fire again during sleep, strengthening their connections. This process is called memory consolidation. It's the reason all-night study sessions don't work. Without sleep, your brain can't store what it learned. You might feel like you learned more, but by morning, most of it will be gone. Now, let's talk about attention, the gateway to learning. In a world designed to steal your focus, attention has become a superpower. Every notification, every scroll, every dopamine spike trains your brain to crave novelty over depth. But deep learning, the kind that changes who you are, requires sustained focus. Neuroscientists call it the flow state, when your prefrontal cortex quiets down and all your mental energy aligns toward one goal. You can't reach that state if you're constantly switching tasks. The rule is simple. You can't learn deeply if you don't pay deeply. But learning faster isn't just about focus and memory. It's about emotion. Your brain doesn't store facts neutrally. It prioritizes what feels meaningful. That's why you can remember the lyrics to songs from years ago, but forget what you studied last week. Emotion is the brain's tagging system for importance. When you connect what you're learning to something personal, a goal, a curiosity, a story, your brain releases dopamine, the chemical that enhances attention and memory. In other words, curiosity isn't a distraction from learning. It's the fuel that powers it. And here's something fascinating. Mistakes are not interruptions in learning. They are learning. When you make a mistake and correct it, your brain releases a small spike of dopamine. That chemical signal tells your neural network, pay attention, this is how we improve. That's why people who learn through trial and error often outperform those who try to get everything perfect the first time. The brain thrives on feedback, not perfection. It's wired to evolve, not to avoid error. So, what does it really mean to learn faster? It's not about racing through lessons or memorizing facts. It's about building a system where your brain learns efficiently. You learn faster when you challenge your comfort zone, when you retrieve instead of reread, when you rest instead of grind, when you connect emotion to knowledge. Each of these acts aligns with how your brain naturally grows. The science is clear. Your brain doesn't need more information. It needs better conditions to transform it into wisdom. The best learners, scientists, musicians, athletes, all share one trait. They don't just study, they experiment. They treat learning like a lab. Every failure is a data point. Every frustration, a signal of growth. They don't rely on motivation to start. They rely on systems that make progress inevitable. They understand that mastery isn't built in a single moment of inspiration, but in small, consistent rewires of the brain. One challenge, one mistake, one breakthrough at a time. And maybe that's the real secret to learning faster. It's not about hacking your brain, it's about partnering with it, working with its rhythms, not against them. When you understand how your mind learns, how it focuses, remembers, and changes, you stop being a passive student and become an active architect of your intelligence. You stop chasing speed and start creating depth. And that's when learning becomes effortless. Not because it's easy, but because it's aligned. So the next time you sit down to learn something new, remember this. Your brain is a living, evolving system. It doesn't care about how smart you think you are. It cares about how you train it. Every focused minute, every patient repetition, every night of good sleep. These are not small acts. They're the science of becoming who you're meant to be. Learning faster isn't about doing more. It's about doing it right. And when you do, you realize the real goal was never just to learn quickly, it was to learn deeply, because true learning doesn't just change what you know, it changes who you are.